However, I know the source of this kind of statement. It's the idea that the nations do not exist, only individuals. And if some poor broad in Soviet Russia didn't want an invasion, so he's not a communist, we mustn't hurt him. Who do you think permits governments to go to war? Only a government can put a country into war, and who keeps that government in power? The citizens of that country, including the worst dictatorship. Even Soviet Russia, who did not elect the communists, keeps them in power by passivity. Nazi Germany did elect its dictatorship, and therefore even those Germans who were against Hitler were still responsible for that kind of government and had to suffer the consequences. Therefore, if we attack a dictatorship or any enslaved country, I want to say that individual citizens in a country that goes to war are responsible for that war, which is why they should be interested in politics and careful about not having the wrong kind of government. If one could make a distinction between the actions of a government and the actions of individual citizens, why would we need politics at all? All governments would be on one side doing something among themselves, and we private citizens will be going along as happy, idyllic tribalism. But that picture is not true. We are responsible for the government we have, and that is why the science of politics, and that's why it's important to take our responsibility very, very seriously. If we become a dictatorship and somebody, a freer country, attacks us, they have the right to do so.
Why do you think people should be concerned about the nature of their government? Certainly the majority in any country at war is innocent. But if by neglect, ignorance, or helplessness, they couldn't overturn or choose a bad government and choose a better one, then they have to pay the price for the sins of their government, as all of us are paying for the sins of ours. That's why we have to be interested in the philosophy of government and in seeing, to the extent we can, seeing to it that we can have a good government, because a government is not an independent entity. It's supposed to represent the people of a nation. If some people put up with Soviet dictatorship, not all of them, but some do, as they did in Germany, they deserve whichever their government deserves. There is no innocent people in war. The only thing to be concerned with is who started that war. And once you can establish that it's a given country, there is no such thing as considerations for the right of that country, because it has initiated the use of force and therefore stepped outside the principle of right.
The idea that an individual inside a country can be made secure from the social system under which he lives and which he accepts, willingly or unwillingly, even if he's fighting it, he still accepts he hasn't left the country. The idea is that others should respect that man's right and collapse to aggression themselves. In other words, not be goddamn pacifists who would not fight even when attacked because they might kill innocent people. Look, if this were so, nobody would have to be concerned about his country's political system. If you could have a life independent of the system, which other countries and other nations respected, so that you wouldn't be drawn into an unjust war if you're an innocent victim. If that were so, we would not need to be concerned about politics. Why is it important to be concerned about politics? Why should we care about having the right social system? Because our lives are dependent on it, because those systems, good or bad, are established in our name and we bear the responsibility. So that the Soviet citizens who are innocent, I hope, someday will be destroyed in a proper war along with the guilty. There aren't very many innocent ones, and they're not in the big cities. They're mainly in concentration camps. But right or wrong, nobody must put up with aggression and surrender his right of self-defense for fear of hurting somebody else, guilty or innocent. When someone comes at you with a gun, if you have 1 ounce of self-esteem, you will answer him by force, never mind who he is or who is behind him. If he is attacking you because he's out to destroy you, and this is what you owe to the sanctity of your own life, if you have self-esteem.
And you know the contradiction of international law? The attempt to make the use of physical force, which is war, subject to some kind of laws. You can't. You can agree by mutual consent not to murder prisoners or not to bomb women and children if it can be helped. But it's an agreement of no great significance, actually, because the idea of a war, which means 2 groups of men who have decided that they cannot reach any rational agreement and they resort to force. The standard now is who can bring the other one to submission by means of force. If they have been brought to that state, everything goes. There can be no laws being observed, or not even an etiquette, if you consider that men are slaughtering each other and are deciding issues by means of murder. So that such a thing as don't bombard hospitals. Well, it's valid if both sides see an advantage in it. But the idea don't murder women and children, I don't think is particularly relevant if you're murdering men. What's the difference? And it's demonstrated in Vietnam all the time because women and children are right there with the guerrillas. How are you going to make a distinction? If it is tactically necessary to bomb civilians during a war, you have to. More than that, it's your moral duty to do so. Because otherwise, what are you doing? Kind of a medieval, tournament where people are dying while waving ladies' handkerchiefs. There is no laws can hold, nothing can hold, no morality can hold against state of war. And if it's in a war, one party is the aggressor, anything that the other party does is morally justified because it's an act of self-defense. And the total annihilation of the aggressor is proper, except for the fact that you have to be damn sure that you're not both at fault, which is sometimes the case. But in most wars, it's always the more controlled countries that attacks the freer